At the start of preseason, we gave you all some champions and builds to try out, but we intentionally left out tanks knowing that they were going to be looked at for hotfixes. Well, tanks were hotfixed, and they're definitely still OP, and running rampant at all levels of play. So we know that everyone is going to be extremely annoyed with how strong they are at the moment, and we're here to give you the answers that you need in order to counter them. Obviously, you can just pick tanks and follow the if you can't beat them, join them strategy, but sometimes you have to pick damage if you're severely lacking in it in order to deal with them, or you may just not be a tank player and want to play carries. In this video, we're going to go over the absolute best picks our experts have found, as well as their builds, and talk about general pathing decisions that you can make to help shut tanks down. Let's get started. First up, we've got Elise. Personally, my favorite champion, and who even with percentage damage has in the past struggled with tanks due to usually building flat pen and not itemizing for long drawn out fights in favor of one-shots. Now we have access to a slew of new AP items and interactions that make her really strong. Even stronger than when I abused her in my speedrun climb to Masters. In preseason, Elise was changed to include on-hit effects on her Spider Form Q, meaning she now procs Lichbane and Gnasher Tooth passives, opening her build for more variety to deal with more things. As junglers, we know that adapting to the game state is key, and more viable build paths means better answers to more things. Options are always king. When deciding what to build, you should look at how many tanks and melees the enemy has. You can go full tank killer, hybrid, or squishy killer. So if the enemy team is 3+ melees or tanks, probably go full tank killer and prepare for long fights. This means taking Conqueror in your runes, as well as Ravenous Hunter, and then building Riftmaker into Gnasher's Tooth. Riftmaker gives Omnivamp, which Elise can use extremely well since most of her kit is single target. In combination with Conqueror, this heals for an absolutely insane amount. Once you stack Riftmaker passive, you get 10% bonus true damage, which applies to your percent damage on both of your Qs and heals you as well. Playing against tanks means you expect the fights to go on for a long time, and this is why adding Gnashers to Riftmaker makes Elise so scary. In Spider Form, you get a massive 140% attack speed steroid. Couple that with on-hit damage and Spider Form Q now applying on-hits, and you've got a very scary sustained DPS that will shred through tanks and heal for a massive amount the entire time. If you're playing into 2 tanks or melees, consider going hybrid. Night Harvester deals an insane amount of burst damage comparable to the old jungle item, which will let you still kill squishies easily, even if you use Conqueror, which we recommend. Afterwards, go into Gnashers, which will still give you some extra burst on your Spider Form Q, as well as sustained DPS to kill tanks. It's not as good as the previous build in doing so, but remember, this is why changing your builds to fit the situation is so important. Against 1 or less tanks, go Night Harvester into Lichbane for the squishy one-shot potential. In all 3 of these builds, you can slot in situational items for the rest of the build, but Void Staff and Zhonya's are going to be pretty core in most of your games. Additionally, in 10.24, Omnivamp against jungle monsters from your jungle item is being changed to work with AoE, so Elise Human W is going to heal for a ton now, on top of her already good sustain, meaning her clear is going to be very healthy even when doing Raptors. Moving on to our next pick, we've got Graves. In the past, he just built Warrior into Black Cleaver and Crit to deal with heavy tank teams. Now, with Crit being nerfed, most Graves are just building Eclipse into full lethality. Obviously, lethality is not meant to kill tanks, so why is he on this list? In 10.24, Eclipse's cooldown for ranged characters is being increased to 16 seconds, so his main item is being nerfed anyways, and we thought of a different one. Against a bunch of melee tanks, we actually recommend going Gore Drinker. Fights are going to last a long time, and being in melee range as Graves is the best way to actually deal maximum damage to any target, which means you're going to need sustain. Gore Drinker gives an increase in AD as you get lower from its passive, and gives a heal based on missing health that scales with AD. Graves tends to love going full damage, and having something that makes your survivability and sustain go way up relative to your damage is really important in long fights, especially since Omnivamp is not nearly as good for him as the old Death Dance healing was. Additionally, you get a ton of CDR from the item itself and its mythic passive, which will later increase even more with Black Cleaver CDR. On Graves, CDR is extremely valuable since his E is reduced by a flat amount when you auto, but CDR reduces the max cooldown, giving you insane value as you stack more and more of it. It also reduces the cooldown of Gore Drinker, letting you spam it in fights once it goes down to about 7 or 8 seconds. If you don't need the armor pen and percent health damage from Cleaver that early, and instead need survivability, go into Sterax, which has insane synergy with Gore Drinker. Sterax shield will pop when you get below 30%, and then you can use Gore Drinker to get a huge heal based on your missing HP. This essentially gives you 2 full health bars, which means tanks who do a lot of damage but over time, not in bursts, aren't going to be able to actually kill you. You can round out your build with Lord Doms for more damage versus tanks, and other items like Death's Dance, Bloodthirster, Mercurial Scimitar can help you stay alive longer in the fight. Just like Elise, we're also extremely versatile with our build. Lethality isn't going to be bad after Eclipse nerfs either, so if you pick Graves early in the draft after seeing a tank, and then they pick all squishies, you can still adapt to the situation and go for one-shots with Eclipse and Collector. And this season in particular, it's going to be extremely important to pay attention to enemy comps and builds, and adapt on the fly, as we have so many more options than before. Champions that have multiple builds are going to be the ones that come out on top in this season. Sticking with the same theme, let's move on to our next pick on this list. We're probably all familiar with Hecarim's old build by now. Straight rush a Trinity Force and get to one-shotting squishies. While this build is still good in less tanky games, we do have more options now. Hecarim's most important early spike is Sheen, which in Season 11 is now just 700 gold. This means you get a really huge spike on your first base, even if you do nothing but farm your own jungle. This consistency is absolutely huge. In addition, Hecarim benefits a lot from jungle item Omnicamp changes, as his first clear was usually his weakest point, and now it's basically full HP and quick, even without potions. Luckily, we've got a new sheet item now, and it absolutely destroys tanks. Divine Sunder does percentage max HP damage instead of flat damage like Trinity, which means you shred high HP targets. It also heals you for 50% of the damage dealt as well, turning HP stacking targets big health pools against them, and making you an unkillable drain tank in combination with your W. If you couple this with Black Cleaver that shreds armor and does percentage HP damage, tanks don't stand a chance. I don't even have Conquer in this game, and I'm absolutely rolling the enemy team. You can build items like Sterak's, Spirit Visage, Deadman's, Death's Dance, and pretty much anything that gives you damage or makes you survive longer, depending on what you need. If we look at all of these picks, you might have noticed a commonality between all 3 that allows them to deal with tanks. Take a second to think. You might have said sustain and DPS, and while that's true, what we really want to focus on is that all 3 of these champions are known for early pressure. Tanks' main weakness is by far their early game, before they manage to get that many items and become unkillable. They're usually weaker in 1v1s, have slower clears, and get pushed around by top tier skirmishing champions. It's for this reason that these picks are so good. Not only do you have ways to deal with tanks in the late game, but you also have the potential to just bully early and end the game before you need to. In general, when you're playing versus tanks, get on map early and look to take fights and start snowballs. Graves and Elise are known for their insane invade potential, while Elise and Hecarim are known for their ganks. All 3 are great skirmishers, so make sure to use it. Each champion has different things they excel at to get ahead. Most lower elo players' main weakness, and why amumu has always been a good pick at low elo even before Season 11, is because their weak early game often goes unpunished. Amumu at high MMR would get relentlessly invaded and shut down. Same with most tanks last season. Those weaknesses didn't go away with the new jungle. In fact, jungle clear is actually harder for quite a few champions like Zac or Rammus. If you shut them down early and don't let them get to their items, you're not going to struggle. If you want examples to teach you how to do this, make sure to check out our website, where we have tons of pro player analysis and live games, where our challengers show and teach you exactly what to look for to make tanks' lives a living hell. With that, we now have answers to the absolutely broken tank meta that we're facing in preseason. Let us know your favorite builds to deal with tanks, and any champions you feel might deserve a spotlight from us. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.